from where you at. I came here for vengeance, watch your back. No need to defend, I'm on attack. Sorry they can't reply, but I guarantee they had a blast. Pop, 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 I be on the next only, yeah, I am fresh to death.
Welcome back to the Long Haul Mentality. My name is Nick Bagley, as always, and today I've got my friend Dean McKillop on. How are you, bro?
Mate, I'm well. Yourself?
I'm really glad that I asked you to pronounce your last name before this, so I didn't fuck that up.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest one is like McKillop. It sounds similar to that of the Saint Mary, but without the A. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, cool, man. How's the trips going right now? I know you guys are in Atlanta for the next show, right?
Yeah, man. I'm really liking being in Atlanta. The landscape is very different. It's super green. Like it's a little bit more like similar to some of the places I've been in Australia. But we went to Madhouse gym yesterday, man. I don't know if you've ever had the chance of being there, but I've never been so impressed by a gym than I have probably going into there.
So one of my good buddies, Jarius, is one of the trainers up there. He goes by Go Crazy Big J on Instagram. He's a trainer up there, and I'm always seeing like his program just moves around so much because there's so many different pieces. Like he'll do a squat pattern, but it'll be like a different squat pattern every couple of months. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, this is crazy. But it's definitely, I mean, I don't know if you saw all the stuff that's been coming into Destination here recently, but we're definitely bumping up as far as the equipment that's coming in there.
Oh yeah, dude, even there was new, like we were there obviously 12 months ago. And there was a whole bunch of new kit there, which was fun to play on. But like, I think the thing about Madhouse, man, is it's almost like a museum mixed with a place to train. Like, yeah, it's crazy cool. I'm not even a guy who goes to like destination gyms. Like I won't go way out of my way for a gym.
Right.
Cause I'm just living in the life of maintenance. So, you know, which is, has its pros and cons. But man, I was like, I'd drive for this place. This place is cool.
Yeah, there was actually a place in North Carolina where I lived in North Carolina before I moved here. So you're in my neck of the woods. There you go. Did you lose connection for a second?
Yeah, you just dropped out, but it's all good.
Yeah, so it'll keep recording actually. So if you just like, as long as it comes back, we'll keep rolling. But if it pauses too hard, I'll pause it and we'll reconnect. But
yeah, man, no stress.
So I'm from North Carolina, and in the 6 months before I decided to move to Texas, I found a gym that was like, where I worked, it was out that direction, but it was like a 40-minute drive from my place. So like on my way home from work, I would stop by there because it was on my way home, and it's called Kaijak's Gym. And the owner literally just has like the most off the wall piece of equipment. Like it's got great stuff in there, but then it's got just some random stuff that like you would never use, but it's like just this, it's something that looks like it should be in a museum. Right. And it's like there's neck pieces that you're like sticking your head in and like rotating on and this kind of thing. And I'm like, man, this place is wild, but so much fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yesterday we specifically used this bicep curl machine because it was made by Stairmaster. I didn't even know they did that stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that either. Yeah,
man, it was this like unilateral pin-loaded bicep, like seated bicep curl. You would think it's like going to be like a typical like low incline dumbbell curl, but then as you curl, it actually goes into active shoulder flexion. I was like, "What the hell is this?" It was awesome.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Did it feel good? Was it nice?
It was actually pretty good once you sort of like could sit into it and get it the right way.
Yeah.
Like line it up. It was cool. It was very cool.
Sometimes those ones that move too much are hard to get lined up depending on how tall or short you are, you know?
Yeah.
That's my main issue with them. But yeah, I love that there's like these eccentric people who are still really into old equipment and like keeping that stuff around and whatnot. Cause like a lot of the new, like some of the new tech stuff is really cool. Some Panada stuff is really cool. Like, but for the most part, dude, the old school stuff is always been like the gold standard. Like I don't think I use anything that's the new hammer strength stuff. All the old stuff is the stuff that's still really good, you know?
But yeah, 100%. But yeah, anyways, man, he must have had Nautilus stuff there from, I didn't even know when Nautilus began, but it was literally from their first years, and it's all refurb too. So it's all like, he has rooms for chain drives, and anyway, we won't talk about Madhouse too much.
We can sit here and geek out about equipment the whole time. I do believe, but
guess where I'm going after this podcast?
Yes, yeah, I'm jealous, man. I'm not leaving the house for a little bit since I got the cruds, but and apologize to everyone who's going to hear me sniffle this whole time, but so the main reason I wanted to come chat with you today was you had two guys compete at both Tampa and Texas. Those shows are a week apart. you had Cam in the 212, and then you had Matt in the open. And there was two things I wanted to chat with you about. First off, you nailed pause. Both of those guys were hit really hard. Like, I'm still fucking that up. Their peak was great.
Mm.
So their peak was fantastic. They both had a very polished look to them. And then you also talked to me about how Matt had a little bit of a cold or some kind of thing going on going into Tampa. And one of the aspects of that I really appreciated was he talked about how calm you were for it. Even though maybe internally you were kind of freaking out a little bit, but externally you were putting off a very calm aspect. So first off, I want to walk through some of the things that you do with Cam and Matt within the final weeks to start dialing them in to where they bring something that as crazy as they did.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anywhere in particular you would like to start?
Yeah, let's start with Cam, because obviously I've seen you guys the last couple of years in a row now, because they've both been out. Cam did Texas last year too, correct?
Yeah. So last year, Cam came across and did Tampa, and then did Texas, and they were the two shows he did. And this was actually Matt's pro debut for the IFBB. So, and I've never actually peaked Matt in person. I've only ever coached Matt online, which was cool. Whereas Cam, I had peaked in person both prior to him being a pro and then as a pro. So, two slightly different, situations, but.
Right. But dude, I told this to Cam already, but he made some crazy changes from last year to this year. Like, he put on some real density to that physique where now it's like, dude, that's a 212 bodybuilder. Like that dude is stacked. And I saw him posing where everybody likes to pose at destination over by that mirror over on the side. And his skin looked like sandpaper, man. So I'm sure I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways, just out of curiosity. What did you end up doing from last season to this season that helped him change his physique that dramatically?
Just a very, very targeted approach to growing in the right places. So, like, Cam's always had fantastic legs. They've always been a dominant body part. And he's always just had to slowly bring up the chest and slowly bring up the back. He's always had fantastic arms and delts. But previous years, we'd actually limited his training on arms and delts. So much so because they were such a strength compared to he's very limb dominant. But for the last 12 months, he essentially ran quite literally the same program and split for the entirety of his growth phase, which basically meant training legs once a week at most. And he was only doing in the vicinity of 10 total sets, including quads and hams. And then twice a week back, twice a week chest, and also then layering in some arms and delts because, as you know, in the pro division, it's a bit different to amateurs. I think you get marked down quite a lot being asymmetrical in the amateurs, whereas in the pros, it's kind of good to have a couple of body parts that are a little bit wacky. And that paid massive dividends for him, man. So it was just constantly just nailing progression over time, fairly low volume, taking a targeted volume-like approach where necessary, as opposed to, just hammering him nonstop. So, but Cam's very diligent in programming, man. He's on a program, filling out his forms, finding the progress where it matters, taking sets where they need to be taken every week without fail for the last 12 months.
Dude. And that's kind of where I figured you were going with that. But there's 2 points I really want to drive home to people on that is first off, consistency, right? Cam just kept showing up. Cam just kept doing what he was told to do, kept doing the same training, didn't look for anything fancy, and just kept moving, right? And then second, the targeted approach, right? Of, all right, cool, you've gotten to a point where we built the physique really well. We need to get really fine-tuned with this training now. And I think oftentimes people who are not at a level of Cam start to do that, and they start to prioritize things that don't matter yet because they haven't put on enough tissue. Right. And sure, you might have some body parts that are a little bit more dominant to others, but unless they're so ridiculous that it is completely taking away from things, you don't need to get that dialed in on it. Right. So it's really paying attention to as Cam has gotten more experience and, like you said, moving into the pro ranks, it's cool, we need to be more specific of cool, you don't need any more legs right now. We really need to bring up the chest and back because that's holding us back now. Let's put these things on the back burner and make a really aggressive push on these. And now that physique is to a balanced point where maybe you can go a little bit more balanced with the program again. With him coming into the show, obviously he's got more tissue on. You've peaked him in person before. What were some of the main differences leading into this show from the previous season for Cam? We'll get into Matt a little bit.
What's going on, everyone? Going to take a quick break from the podcast and check in with my main man, Everett, here. You can see the red light on behind me. That just means one thing. We're going to promote some sponsors right quick. There are no paid sponsors or paid ads for this podcast. So anyone who's watching, I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Share this podcast with your friends. Leave a comment. It does help a ton. The other thing you can do is help support the sponsors that work with me. And you see I have my Labrada Pro Series line here. So we've got the hydro, glutamine, creatine, and EAAs with some new pre-workout on the way. So if you like the podcast, you support me, use my code BAGLY10 at checkout and get yourself a discount. Let's get back to the episode.
Man, peaking wise, actually not too dissimilar, if I'm honest. I'm very lucky with Cam. He's pretty predictable. Like, he's not somebody who typically has like big swings in fluid balance that you have to account for. He responds incredibly well to, I suppose you could call it like more of a backload approach to carbohydrate loading. So long as he doesn't come into the final day or the final 2 days of peak week too flat, then you can pretty much push his food and just keep pushing it to a fairly similar like weight target, and he'll come in good. And like I said, he has pretty predictable fluid balance. So like, you don't need to do anything silly there for him. It's just a matter of topping up glycogen stores consistently. And I suppose you like sufficiently, not going too far and not going too little. I mean, I know that's obviously the case. That's what you're trying to do with everyone, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So for him, it was like finding like when we're happy with the condition at around about probably 10 to 12 days out was about the right time. It was moving him back to roughly maintenance and just getting him to be weight stable for a little bit. In the past, I've dipped him back down, like done a mild depletion, like for 1 or 2 days, on higher calories, but lower carb and higher fat. But I didn't need to do that this time. So that changed a little bit. It was just a progressive kind of linear escalation of carbohydrates into the first show. And it's been very similar actually from last year to this year. And that coming into Tampa, it was like sufficiently full, but like pushing a little bit more towards condition. Assess the look and see how he compared. And then the same as last year, but probably even more so this year, was he wasn't going to get beaten on condition or marked down for condition in Texas, from what I could tell from the other shows, because he was up there at the top sort of echelon of the condition guys, and all of the top 5 were, to be fair. But what he was giving up was still a bit of size. So I knew I had to have him come in like at least appropriately full, maybe even slightly spilled for Cam standards, to compare from a size perspective. Because I mean, he was up against, Marco from France. He was like an extra 3 or 4 kilos up on Cam. Sorry. So was Esteban, I imagine, and then obviously Lucas, who won the show, was actually heavier than Cam too, and shorter. He's wild, man.
That guy's freaky. I've seen people comparing him next to Phil Heath.
Dude, I've never seen a dude so like hard and full just walking around.
The first picture I saw was that most muscular. I'm like, what the fuck? And just the density to that physique is crazy. I'd never heard of him before, but how much weight does Cam still have in his weight cap?
A scale weight in the morning of the show, probably around about 87 to 88 kilograms. So he'd be like just under 200 pounds, like 198 to 202.
Okay. So he's still got
Heaps.
like 12, 13, 14 pounds, something in that.
Heaps,
that's
man.
Beautiful, man. That's fantastic. So that's such a good spot to be in versus the opposite. You know, it's like the people who have to fight down to 212, I think, end up doing themselves a disservice a lot of times. And like the prime example is Keon right now. I mean, Keon's probably about the same weight that Cam is, right? By the time he gets to the stage, I mean, he's around 200 pounds. Like, and he'll be maybe like 205 to 209, somewhere in that range, and still got room to grow and still looks twice as big as everybody else. It's like, well, no wonder he's the king of the thing right now, because he doesn't have to worry about anything. He just grows and his body does what it needs to. But
yeah, and you can peak without consideration for making weight, you know?
Yep. That was my next thing.
Cam and I were talking about this last night. Like when he first competed with me, man, like this is only I think it's his 7th show. That was total shows.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So he's done two pro seasons, and then prior to that, he did 2 amateur seasons, and then won the 3rd. the pro show, but the pro qualifier. But his first show with me ever was like 72 kilograms, and
What?
now 88. Yeah, man. He was yeah.
So I'm trying to do the math in my head, but I'm like, good Lord, wow, he was pretty small. So, I mean, he's put on some good size.
Yeah, man. We're
In
talking
7 years? That's crazy.
16 kilos, or like 40 pounds. So, because
Yeah.
we're actually watching a Jordan Hutchinson video, and he said he put on about 10 pounds a season. And I was like, Cam, you're actually pretty much the same. Like, and you're smaller. So the fact that you're doing that is fantastic. And even if we could just put on 5 pounds in the next season would be incredible.
And that point that you just made that Cam's put on about 10 pounds a season and Jordan's put on about 10 pounds a season, the crossover with those two humans, obviously they compete in different divisions, is they are both like deadly consistent, and deadly accurate. And all they're doing is going, here, you tell me what to eat, you tell me how I look, I'm going to do the rest. And those are the people who end up being the most successful, that put on these kinds of poundages that makes people go, holy shit, how did you do it? It's like, well, I'm doing the same thing you are, I'm just doing it better. And that's it. You know, it's like this whole rigmarole that we see on Instagram of like, it's science-based lifting is the way to go, and bro lifting is the way to go, and this, that, and none of it matters. None of it fucking matters. The only part of it that matters is that you're consistent and you work your fucking ass off. Those are the two things that truly matter.
Yeah, man. We have a hashtag that we use a fair bit in Flex, which is relentless repetition. That's my thing. You know, and it is like finding joy in the ability to do the monotonous stuff repeatedly for fucking ever.
Yeah.
You know, and really and do it really hard.
It's funny because Monday I started a 12-week cut, like you said earlier, like you're in a maintenance phase and just kind of maintaining what you have. I've been doing that for like the last year, and I'm ready to just do something for fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing a daily vlog of a 12-week cut that I'm going to put out on YouTube. And then of course I get sick 2 days into it, but I've still stuck to everything. I have not missed anything. The diet, I still did cardio. Like I'm still doing that stuff. I'm just not going to go to the gym and get people sick. But my main point in that vlog is I'm going to show you how boring this shit is. Like I'm going to show you how like everybody thinks that my day is something crazy. It's really not. I sit here in front of this computer. I send out messages. I talk to people on podcasts. I go to the gym. I eat the food. That's it. Like it's really boring. And the problem that people don't understand is that they don't know how to handle that. They don't know how to do that year after year after year after year after year before ever getting recognized for it. Right? Like Cam's still at a spot where people are just now starting to know who he is. And now we see even more change and people go, cool, that guy's a contender, you know? So it's like, you got to go years of like anonymity unless you're a freak.
Yeah. There's like some cliche saying, I never remember it. So isn't it like, overnight success is actually like, you know, the representation of like 10 years worth of work, you know?
Yep. The decade
and that
of
is
work
very
you
much
put
it.
into it.
And because I mean, like every new mesocycle that would hit with Cam, it was like I have a bunch of questions. It's like, is there anything that's not working for you from a stimulus to fatigue ratio on exercise selection? Have you got any niggles? And outside of niggles and injuries, it was every now and then it'd be like, no, I'm just going to change this exercise, but for the same movement pattern because it's no longer producing the same level of progression. And that was it. And it was maybe 1 or 2 exercises a meso, maybe.
I love that, man.
So.
I think you and I, without ever having spoke about it, do a lot of very similar things, you know, because like, especially somebody who's newer, when they come on and they go, well, when are we going to change my program? I'm like, well, if it stops working, like, like, what do you think I'm going to change? Because like a flat press is a flat press. All you're doing is changing the machinery that you're using. And like, maybe that's a mental side of things that helps you feel like you're doing something better. Maybe it's a profile of the machine. Maybe it's whatever, something fresh, just making you feel good. But aside from that, it's like, we're going to keep doing the same things. That's it. Like, there's no magic shit that I can do for you.
Yeah.
I know we talked about.
I think it's because people have a disconnect between what they think they're paying you for.
Yeah.
Like, people think they're paying you for change. Like a menu at a restaurant. Like, oh, you change the menu next week, right? You're like, well, no. You know, you're paying me for my experience. I make this menu very good, you know, like, and it's the same with this. It's like, I think some of the best coaches are the coaches that know when to say no or know when to not make change, you know, and Matt will actually be a perfect example of this when we do get to him later on about not getting too far ahead of the decision-making process 24 hours out when we hit these problems. and
Right.
not rushing into things, so.
Right. And we can kind of transition, but before we get off cam, one of the things we talked about with Matt was how you manipulate sodium and potassium with him.
Mm.
Do you have to do any of that with Cam? Like how do you go about his electrolyte balance and like fluid intake?
No, we keep neutral fluid? Sometimes his fluid will slightly dip just on the very last day, but it's only a relative fluid dip in that, to give some numbers for reference. Let's just say his total fluid intake for the day, which is all inclusive, things that go into cream of rice, I account for, like even fluid going into actual cooked rice, all this sort of stuff. That may actually come down while his carbohydrates are going up ever so slightly on that last day. So technically, he's in like a somewhat of a semi-dehydrated state because the carbohydrate demand or supersedes the fluid intake of a normal day.
Right.
But his actual like consumed fluid will usually still stay at around about 4 to 4.5 liters for the day. But his total fluids for that day might end up coming down from like say 6 to about 4.5 to 5 because of some food choices.
Yeah.
So I might be giving him more carbohydrates from basic sources like rice cakes and jam versus adding more and more rice because the rice load is already quite high.
Right.
And his load on average has been around about 750 grams of carbs, 24 hours out, and then prior to that about 500 to 600 grams of carbs.
Yeah, boy can eat.
Yeah.
So what about salt? Do you keep that pretty consistent as well?
Yeah, sodium for him is neutral. He's actually pretty much like at a 1-to-1 ratio with his sodium and potassium. He's pretty equal there.
So you use sodium with use it with everybody?
Use salt, or you mean, or
sodium and potassium. So everybody you have has some kind of balance of those.
Yeah. So my peak documents will account for potassium in food, and they'll account for sodium in food, and then added sodium on top of that will also go into that. And then I'll just keep an eye on their ratios. Some people I'll manipulate those ratios depending on what they're like. And then I will sometimes also then start to shift sodium sources from a standardized like normal like rock salt or table salt or iodized salt to something like a high potassium salt if, for example, I have to pull a bunch of potassium dominant foods or I want to shift the needle towards more of a potassium dominant diet. So that's the major, I suppose, like electrolyte manipulation that I'll do.
Right. And just to explain to people at home what you're looking for with that shift in potassium when you do that, what is it that you're typically seeing with your athletes that you're going, cool, we need to shift you? And then what response are you expecting from that potassium? I don't think a lot of people understand how that works.
Yeah, so if we were looking for something more acute, then typically what I should see is an increase in diuresis or an increase in fluid expulsion or expelling more fluid on that day. It's not generally as acutely effective as what people may expect it to be, but rather more like cumulative, like over 1 or 2 days or 2 or 3 days. It's not like you can have like one potassium dominant meal and see a drastic effect. Usually you can do that inversely though with sodium. In my experience, you can have a fairly high sodium load in a meal and see a fairly significant change within a few hours if they're sensitive to sodium. So generally speaking, like coming into the last 2 weeks is when I start to like really regulate this. Most of my guys are going to be having like relatively similar food groups. So I know that the potassium content of their diet is quite high. The biggest variation between individuals is then how much salt they have on each meal. And that's just something that's been found over the course of time for performance and preference and stuff like that in their off seasons or growth seasons. And then if those are a little bit skewed or someone is a little bit more susceptible to fluid like retention or like shifts in that, then I might start to like slowly skew towards more potassium dominance to try and drive a more consistent like removal of fluid so that when they get to peak week, that's pretty predictable. And then I don't usually have to do too much. So it's actually kind of like I'm actually kind of like getting fluid checked at around about 2 weeks out usually.
Yep. Yeah, I've found it to be a very interesting tool for, like you said, people who tend to hold a little bit of water. I've also noticed a big benefit for like African American athletes, right? Like my client Blake, who's a classic physique competitor when we did nationals last year, the best look we got from him was using aldactone the week prior leading into the show. And because of the way aldactone works, not only did it help kind of regulate his anxiety, but then pushed his potassium retention up, which then helped him flush water and got him to like relax and push all this fluid off that he was kind of holding leading into that last week. And then an athlete that I have now going to the Amateur Olympia, I put a little bit of potassium in his diet. Very, very minor amount. It's actually like less than, it's like 1 to half. He started to notice a big flush in water, and I started to notice how much more dry he was getting. So it's definitely a really cool tool for certain people. It's not always like a great tool for everyone, you know?
Yeah.
What are some of those potassium foods that you like that are your favorite sources to put into these guys' diets?
Yeah. Man, I'll earmark what you just said then, and this is just 100% anecdotal. There's no science in this, but any of the guys that I've had that are either like Nigerian or from Ghana, and I've got a few like elite level guys at that, they all have a fluid retention bias in my experience or in the history of them. So they do tend to do very well with that. Usually for me, so like the most potassium dominant foods that are going to be in their diets, generally speaking, will be meats. I actually have like most of my guys, unless there's issues with digestion, have like a decent dose of yogurt in a day, which is pretty high. And then just general fruits and vegetables. Most of them are going to have things like bananas and standardized sort of fruits and vegetables there. But then coming into like say a peak, if I'm concerned with food volume, like if they're a classic competitor or a weight controlled competitor, or GI volume I'm trying to keep smaller, then I'll tend to skew towards things like dates. I find them to be like a really nice addition for double win or triple win actually. High potassium, low volume, and also gets the fructose in from a glycogen saturation perspective that we want to get, because comboing fructose up with glucose is highly effective at doing that.
Yep.
And they're my major ones. Some green leafy vegetables, and then their proteins. That's the thing I think sometimes that people like don't realize in a peak week that can actually have someone end up quite fluid retentive is that it makes sense to reduce fibrous vegetables throughout a peak week just from a GI volume and digestion perspective to a degree. And it also makes sense to decrease protein while simultaneously increasing carbohydrates to a degree. But I think if you kind of do it all at once and you don't know what's happening, most people actually end up going from like potassium dominance to sodium dominance. And all of a sudden they're kind of like, how the fuck did I just gain this much weight over the course of a week? And they just didn't realize it was from foods. Obviously, another one that is fantastic is potato. But again, that would be a consideration of volume and fiber because, you know, I've seen potassium loads on potato, and they can not be so fun.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a guy like Cam that has to eat 750 grams of load. I mean, that's getting into being a lot of fucking potato in a meal.
Dude, not only that, but like most of these guys are going to like heat it, cook it, and then cool it. And then like now we're also dealing with like the
Starch.
Considerations for resistant starch, man. Yeah. Like, so
end up really bloated really fast. But so since we talked about that a little bit, let's transition over to Matt, because we had an interesting conversation about what went on in Tampa, and then you brought an even better look to Texas, right? So walk me through kind of what happened at Tampa and what was going on, and then let's talk about your response to what was going on.
Yeah. Let's start off by saying I don't know. Nah. To use like a very Australian slang term, it was just a bit of a shit show of everything.
We use that here too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I landed in Tampa on Tuesday night. Matt was already there. He'd thankfully been in America already for a while, so it wasn't like a flight-based fluid balance issue or anything like that. He'd been there with his wife because she'd been competing already. And everything was fantastic, man. Wednesday, he looked incredible. I think from memory, he's around about like 108 kilos, like fasted first thing in the morning. And then I'd put some food in. Now, just quickly, like historically, Matt is a heavy fluid retainer. Like I remember for his pro qualifier win, I pulled about 5 or 6 kilos off him overnight just with diuresis-based protocols too, like a manipulation of fluid and sodium and a little bit of like aldactone, for example. So he has a highly retentive nature to him. And this week, so the Wednesday he had some food go in, and he kind of went like from 108 to like 109. Then the next day it was like 600 grams of carbs, so we're talking. And then he was like 110 and a half. And I was like, oh, that's a bit bigger than what he would typically see. And then the next morning, and then I was like, I'll pull carbs down just a little bit at sort of 2 days out, sorry. And he woke up at like 112. And I was like, what is going on? Like he was retaining weight more than the food that he was consuming in total volume. And he just wasn't pissing. And his face started to get fat, and he's just was retaining fluid everywhere. Now,
And
thankfully,
this was Thursday before the show when he was 112.
so he started to go up, and then when he woke up in the morning of Friday, he was 112. So this is 24 hours out.
Fun.
Yeah. And he'd been just about 107-ish. So he was up about 5 kilos. I wanted him to be at Friday. I wanted him to be about 109 to 110-ish, roughly. I thought 110 to be about right if I went for my normal sort of approach to him for diuresis on the 24-hour phase. But he woke up beyond that. I was like, okay, interesting. And then I had him checking with me like throughout midday, and he kept retaining more and more and more. Like fluid was going in, food was going in, nothing was coming out.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, fun. But anyway, so I think there was we think he may have got a bit of heat stroke because he went to Universal Studios the weekend before that and was still recovering. He had now in hindsight, like a bit of a dodgy shot or two from something that was a bit murky. And I was like, you probably shouldn't have done that. And he didn't bring his CPAP with him as well. So like with the weight going up, like his sleep then started to become affected. Whereas he's normally pretty good at about 108 or sub 110. So there's just all of these factors, man. All you could really say was, generally speaking, there was just a ton of stress and a heap of fluid retention.
Yep.
So yeah.
It's such an important thing that you mentioned there, that the sleep, like that's probably the biggest one, is the sleep affecting things, like not having his CPAP and then probably not feeling the best and that kind of thing. And that all affects your sleep, and that's going to change how your body responds to things for sure. So one of the really cool parts about that conversation is Matt was there kind of explaining his side of it, and you were there. And one of the points that he made is that like you were cool, calm, and collected the whole time. Like internally, and maybe by yourself, you might have been freaking out, but in front of him, you were very calm. You're like, not a big deal, because he had even mentioned that he was telling you he was going to pull out. He wasn't going to put this on stage. You're like, no, it's fine. We're going to change this. We're going to do this. We're going to see how your body responds, and then if we need to pull out, like right before, we will. Okay, so I think that's such an incredibly important thing, because like if they're already freaking out because they know this isn't the response, he knows his body, he knows that he's holding water. If he sees that you're freaking out, now his stress is going to go up more, right? Which is going to just completely fuck that up. So how do you go about handling those situations when you're dealing, like you're in person with this guy? It's hard to hide emotions. How do you go about handling that so that you don't freak him out, but also make sure that you're making the correct decisions going forward?
Yeah, I suppose an advantage of this is my wife would say that I'm emotionally shallow, and it's correct. It sounds harsh, but it's correct, but it sounds harsh. In that, like I don't really have big highs and big lows. So like you'll even hear from my guys, if they get a compliment from me, it's kind of like, whoa, that's gold, because I know I've done something right. But I don't experience these extreme highs and I don't experience the extreme lows. So I sit like right in neutral. And like Matt and I have been coaching together now for 4 years. I understand his psyche, and he is a guy that is used to having control. Like he co-runs his business with his wife, and they have a really successful business where he looks after a big team, and he's into, like finance, and he's always in control.
Right.
And he's also a go-getter. I need to fix this. I want to fix this now. So for Matt, it was just about like trying to find the calm within the storm and saying to him, hey man, we've got time. And also, he responds very well to, I suppose, like understanding the process and where we're going. So for him in this instance, I was like, I'm willing to pull out if it's the right choice tomorrow. But what I would like from you is the following. And I said, you just need to give me an hour of work tonight, and I'll know for sure whether or not I think this is going to work out. So just hang 10 for me. And he wanted to go do cardio straight. I'll go do it now. And I'm like, no, like it's 2 p.m. If we start pulling fluid now, by the time you get on stage tomorrow at 10 or 2, we're going to have to then catch the reverse of that, which might be retention again. Just to add to this too, he also, like we thought he may have had a bit of the flu, because that kind of kicked in on the Thursday. And the crazy thing too is I actually had started like putting in like a small amount of aldactone on Thursday morning, and then again on Thursday night. And come Friday morning, he still was like this super retentive dude, right? I'm like, whoa, like something's going on. So anyway, it was just about, I think, giving him like a rough idea of what my expectations were and my plan was. Telling him that I was aware of, like acknowledging the reality, because I don't think it's worth saying, nah, man, everything's okay, because he's not that guy. He'd be like, don't bullshit me, but also not being so honest that he could see that I had concerns, So there's a degree of like, giving the person enough rope so that they can help each other out, but not so that they go and noose themselves,
Yep.
And that's what we did, man. He to his credit, like, has learned to sort of just like calm his storm a bit too, and go, all right, man, I'll show up to the gym at 6 p.m. when you asked me to be there. I went there with him to make sure that it wasn't so terrible, and off we went. So we started that process. Basically, it was a very, very slight fluid pull that day. We pulled his fluid down towards the afternoon by about a liter or two. He went essentially no carb, just protein veg.
And this was on Friday?
This is on the Friday. And because I knew he was sufficiently full from a glycogen perspective, he also doesn't train one day out, whereas I'll train Cam one day out. He responds quite well to that. So I knew he was sufficiently full from an intramuscular glycogen perspective, and that the issue was just fluid. So my strategy there was I would just get him to basically get temperature up so that his body has to regulate temperature with sweating. So we just did a little bit of cardio. I think it was around about 7 p.m. We did 25 minutes on a cross trainer in a hoodie. Then he did 10 minutes on a treadmill, 3 rounds of posing. And that was my test to see how fast and how quick fluid would start coming out. And he started pouring out sweat. Like, he was leaking, man. And I was like, cool. We got about, I think from memory, it was around about 2.5 pounds off in 1.5 of those sessions, basically. So he did 25, 10 posing, 25, and there was about 2.5 to 3 pounds that had come off. So he was about 113 kilos at that stage. And I said, all right, cool. Off you go home. This is your final meal, which was just a very small, honestly, man, I think it was, I gave him a little bit of whey and a little bit of fruit, and basically just gave him really small GI food because he's also somebody who doesn't like to have a full stomach before stage.
Sure.
And then a little bit of Algdaltone in that night too. And just watched the piss rate go up, and it just kept going up and up to the point where he woke up at, by the time he went to bed that night, actually, he was already down to about 110, 111. So he'd pulled about 3 or 4 kilos off just in that night. And I was like, okay, this is looking promising. And then I woke up at 4 a.m. to him saying, I'm already 100. What was it? I think he said, I've just hit 107.8. We're good. And
There
I was
you
like,
go.
cool. He was peeing on the hour, every hour, big pees. So then I was kind of like, all right, what's this going to look like tomorrow morning? He ended up actually being pretty light. He was about 106.8 by the time 106 and flat by the time he'd woken up.
So did you get to feed him pretty well before stage?
Less feeding and probably more fluid. That was one of the things that I did take precautionarily for me. I knew I'd rather push him a little bit too far from a dehydration perspective and have to rehydrate him into the show than for him to wake up and still be off and then try and dehydrate him into the show. For me, that's
Right.
just not
It's
good
way
maths.
harder.
Yeah, man, very difficult. So, so we actually had a nibble, basically a quarter, if not less, of a mod throughout the middle of the night too, at about 3 a.m. because I knew by the time that was done in the morning, and most of it sort of taken into account, that I could then rehydrate him from about 8 to 10 a.m. onwards, which is exactly what we did.
And that just started to pull life back into the muscle from there.
Yeah, man. I went and saw him at 8 a.m. after his first 10, and he looked fucking awesome, dude. I wasn't gonna lie. I remember I took video of it, and I just started chuckling. I just started laughing behind the camera, oh, thank God this has happened,
It's yeah, right. That's such a good feeling when it all finally comes together. But it's a testament to the fact that you have a lot of experience with this, right? Because I think a lot of coaches would have panicked and started throwing more diuretics at them and pulling more water and cardio and go sweat it out and all these things. And instead of just pulling one lever at a time and then assessing hour to hour, they would have just started making massive dramatic changes, which probably would have shifted him way worse. Because then if he got to that spot where he's sweating a bunch, he's peeing every hour, but you have it speed up aggressively. And now he's you said he was 106 and a little flat. Maybe he comes in at 103, right? Maybe he's way too low and way too flat. Now there's no place for us to come back, especially if you put in something like a medication, like a diuretic, that it's once it's in, it's in. There's no, you can't take that away. So it's just such a testament to keeping cool under pressure and understanding that the body can change very dramatically, very quickly in a short period of time when you are that lean. Like it's one of those things that like you and I both have probably seen people's bodies go from like, what the fuck are we looking at, to, oh shit, we're going, we're cruising. Right. And that's also a testament to like how you have your system set in place, how well you dieted your guys, because if they weren't in shape, none of that was going to work. Right. Like if they weren't already skinned the fuck out, you wouldn't have been able to salvage that. Like it would have just been, all right, we're going to get on stage looking how we do, you know?
Yeah, he would have
So
been a
that-
floppy mess. I
yeah.
mean, there was a lot said there, man. But you are right. Like in the grand scheme of things, the use of diuretics for him were no greater than they'd ever been in the past. They were just deployed at the right times.
Yep.
And I tested one part at a time. But like you said, like the food was stable. The electrolyte balance of the food was actually the stable. The macronutrients shifted just a little bit. That was first test. You know, like if we're going protein, carbohydrate, if we're just doing protein veg, does he start to urinate more towards the afternoon? Yep, cool. All right, that's one done. If he does just a little bit of a sweat, is that going to come out? Yep, that's that done. And then it was just one additional nudge with the mod at like a quarter of a mod, and that was it. And it was enough to get the ball rolling.
A mod, what is that? Please
Like a
tell
mod
me.
diuretic. So
Oh,
shorthand
okay.
for mod diuretic, yeah.
Mm.
It was like a quarter of that. So like, and for his, it's like the dosage of it is like 6.25 milligrams of the thiazide, of the
Nothing.
diazide. Sorry, so tiny,
Nothing.
you know.
Yeah.
And I knew like it was all moving, so it was just a matter of like nudging.
Yep.
You know, as opposed to like people say like smashing it with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, it's always, I'm always so curious because like I've seen a number of my friends and athletes that I'm just friend like that I'm not coaching, and you'll see them going into a show and they look amazing, and then come day of the show you're like, what happened? And then you talk to them after, and then they reveal that they took a whole diazide the night before and then nothing else at all. And it's like, well, yeah, there's your fucking problem. Like you went way too far trying to push water out. And
Yeah, dude.
then you probably ended up having a rebound off that diazide because you took a whole one and then didn't continue it for a whole 36 hours. Like, yeah, duh. Like your body shifted from pushing too much water out to now holding too much, and there's no fixing it. So it's like, if they're like the biggest thing is I can change food very easily. I can change fluid intake very easily. I can change sodium and potassium very easily. And all of those things will give us a response very, very fast, right? If it is the thing that is going to help shift us, that cardio, like going for a walk, maybe go to the gym and push some of that food around, whatever. If I put in a diuretic, no matter how small or big I go with it, there's no taking it back. There's no fixing it. Once it's in, it's going. Right. So like definitely on the side of the if you are going to use a diuretic with somebody, always err on the lower side of those things, because you can always add more in, you can't take it away. And that's one of those things that will ruin a physique very, very quickly.
Yeah,
So
and
now,
also I think like time for it is super important. I think there's too many people that just say, "Oh, you just take the diuretic the night before."
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, but like, what's its active life? When does it work most effectively? And then when does it possibly start to diminish to the point that you start to see sodium reabsorption, like you said?
Yep.
And like that was actually one major like consideration for Matt. Even was like, all right, well, he's going to compete on the Saturday, and then he competes again next Saturday. We've just pushed out like probably like close to the vicinity of like 12 to 14 pounds of fluid in the space of 24 hours. Now, how do you stop that from happening again on Sunday and then Monday? And then you get to Tuesday and like you want to peak the person again. Like, so I think sometimes that's a big mess up for some people. And I think the wrong approach is what some people will do, to just be to continue running aldactone the entire week. It's possible to do it, but it's not necessary.
Right.
So for Matt, we just basically shifted him to a slightly lower sodium-based diet than for the morning of the next day, for sure. And then it was a slight reintroduction the night of, being Sunday. And then Monday was still low, but like a little bit more dispersed throughout the day. And then Tuesday was pretty much back to electrolyte balance. And he was like his previous maintenance or previous homeostasis. And it meant literally not a single bit of fluid shift in the negative. It was just weight just went exactly where it should have. It was so easy. And to his credit, he relaxed, so it was good.
Yeah, right. And again, the same thing is like after people give someone a diuretic, they're not expecting that rebound to happen. And then they're like, well, is he holding water 2 days later? It's like, well, yeah, because you gave him a diuretic. That's how the body works. Like it's going to try to gain back water plus, right? Because you did some stuff. So understanding that, like, cool, we probably need to manipulate the electrolyte balance up or down depending on what you ended up having to do in order to make sure that you're not playing catch up trying to flush water off while also peaking them, because now those two things are very difficult. So coming off of Tampa and going into Texas, obviously some of those things of like him being sick, not having a CPAP, all those variables started to go away. So peaking him for Texas, I assume, was a little bit easier.
Yeah, man. So I think I've done 3 peaks now for Matt, and every time I've usually had the final day, 24 hours out, being what I would classify as being like, a diuresis bias day, which is typically going to be higher protein, lower carb, maybe higher fats, depending on what I want to do with the calories, right? But for Texas, man, he ended up getting more food. It was awesome. Like I was being very cautious throughout the week, thinking like, I do not want to see this weight start to shift again up.
Right.
And there was one moment I think it was on Wednesday, where he was a bit heavy. I said, hey, just send me your midday weight. I'm just curious to see what it's doing, because he'd gone up a little bit. And he was heavy, and I was like, what's going on? Not this again, here we go. And then I said, just pull carbs for the next 2 meals, And he was like, he's saying to me, like, man, this is stressing me out. And I was like, you cannot afford to be stressed. And again, we kind of found the calm, and he was, again, like, very good. He switched it really quickly. And then by those 2 meals, he'd actually gotten lighter again. I'm like, cool. You're pissing beyond like your intake now, so we're good. So then I gave him a little bit of carb before bed. Next day, woke up light, a little bit more food. Next day, woke up light. And then on Friday, I was like, I'm going to go meal by meal. Like, these are your first 2. And if I can keep giving you more food, I will. Because I know that if you go to bed by this weight, you're going to wake up amazing, because we're not having to fuck around with fluid so much.
Yep.
And dude, that's exactly what ended up transpiring. I basically just had baseline diet, baseline electrolytes nailed. And then it was, if necessary, rice cakes and jam.
Yep.
Like something that was just electrolyte neutral and super easy to get in and low GI volume. And he ended up actually having close to one of his higher carbohydrate days, 24 hours out. And he woke up the next morning, like, by the time we got on stage, he would have been about 4 pounds up on Tampa, which was exactly where I wanted him to be for Tampa. But, sometimes there's, you get like a bit of insight for something that you otherwise would never have seen before. And it's a good thing. And that was that in Tampa, I was concerned that his condition was maybe like still slightly off in some body parts. Like, Matt's somebody who like asymmetrically holds a lot of fat on the central portion of his glutes. And it's been, the bane of his existence of like, I just need that bit to get lean, I just want that to be peeled. And there was a period throughout prep where it was like 2-3 weeks out. He's like, man, I just still want, I'm like, at what cost, like, this is a bodybuilding show. You don't have to have peeled glutes. You have to have good enough. And then the rest of you needs to be big enough, because you're going to give up a lot of size. And his was a shape thing. We knew it was going to be shape. We knew he wasn't going to win on size. And anyway, when he got on the stage at Tampa, man, he was like one of the hardest dudes up there, even after that absolute nightmare of a peak week. And I remember saying to him, like, dude, this is confirmation. I knew you'd look better under lights. I knew you'd be good. But that Tampa showing for me is confirmation that your condition's in a great spot. Now I can afford to push you with a bit of fullness. And I think you'll be rocking for Texas. So that's what we did. He just so happened to also be hard as nails. Like, we just nailed on all fronts, man. It was fucking awesome.
Yeah. No, he was peeled, man. And I definitely think that just some more size, he's going to start doing some good shit in the league. I like his structure. I like his frame. Like, I haven't like analyzed everything as far as his poses are concerned. So what's some of the feedback y'all got from Tampa and Texas for him to go forward, and what does he need to bring up?
Well, Tyler just said to him basically he needed, some bigger lats and bigger chest and all the things that we knew. He's got great legs. No one commented on those. Bill said to him, he goes, man, it was something to this tune. I wasn't there for it. He goes, I love your structure. I love your shape. It looks awesome. Just take a year off and what do you say? And get big as fuck or something like that. And Matt apparently said to him, okay, sounds good. Like, anywhere in particular? And he apparently just looked at him and just waved his hand over his physique and just goes, all of it. just make it all bigger.
Yeah. Hey, that's not a bad thing. I mean, at least it makes it really simple as far as what you want to do with him training wise.
Well, Matt's an instrument, man. This is actually, so Texas was supposed to be his final show. So he was going to do Tampa as his debut and Texas as his like retirement pro show. Like, literally one season, get in, get out. He and his wife want to have another child. And he was like, I don't want to push this limit forever. It was kind of like one of these. And to be fair, to Matt's credit, he's very, very good at analyzing, in that he would have to be like on stage, man, to be competitive in a top 10 sort of range, he's got to probably have to put on like another 20 pounds. And like that doesn't come at a cost, without a cost, as you know.
Yep.
So I don't think that's something that he really has ever thought of, but we're entertaining the idea of doing a European show now. So he may not be officially retired as a professional bodybuilder just yet. We might do a cool show like in 4 weeks, and then he'll probably call it from there. So
yeah, I mean, because he's relatively tall, right? What does he hide in at?
And I want to say he's just on 6 foot.
Yeah.
So
that's the same reason that I ended up saying that I was done. Like I never went pro or anything like that, but I mean, my last show was by far my best. I was 226 on stage, but that was fully clothed, because they had told us that there was going to be no supers. Everybody would just be in the heavyweights, and then last minute they called an audible on us. So I ended up in the supers just because I didn't fully strip down. But it was my best look. But the thing is, I still need another 20 to 30 pounds like of stage weight, right? And like I'm in my 30s. I have a 5-year-old coming up here soon. It's like, how long can I do this? And I'm getting to a point in coaching where it's like, all right, I can do this comfortably, and I really enjoy like working with people who have the gift, who don't have to do that kind of thing. And that's such an important thing that I think people need to hear is like sometimes you need to know when to call it quits, right? Unless you are planning on just this is everything you're going to do for the rest of your life. If that's the case, then bang on, keep rolling, do your thing. But like you got to make sure that fits in the context of everything else of your life, of your job, your relationships, if you have kids, your businesses, all that kind of stuff. If that doesn't make sense, like what are you doing? We've seen a lot of people who are like chasing this dream that's never going to happen. And I think a lot of us look at that and go, I don't want to be that, So it's definitely a very good thing for people here, man. So there's a show this weekend, right, in Atlanta?
Yeah, we got Cam coming up in Atlanta. He's on Saturday, so he's 2 days out now, pretty much.
And how's that coming together? Pretty good?
Man, really good. I actually pulled Cam back down for the first time probably in 3 weeks this week. So, I mean, when I say pulled down, like he's still getting in 200 grams of carbs. It's nothing crazy. But I think, this is another thing where people can get caught out, and maybe experience is one of the things here is there's always a bit of a tipping point with people when you've had the opportunity to pick them back to back to back, where you think, oh, like they're still looking great. But then the third peak week, it's like they've now just actually spent the last 3 weeks at maintenance essentially. So, And like everybody has that post-comp phase, like the week after they look amazing. The week after they still look pretty good. But then the third week of overfeeding, it all just starts to go a bit sideways out of nowhere. I didn't want that to happen with Cam. So, and the boys are all very sharp. So we pulled him down for 3 days. He starts to get a bit more food today. And then we'll load him. I think I'll load him pretty hard tomorrow, to be honest.
Will he be a little bit heavier this time around, or what are your thoughts on that?
He actually weighed in this morning identically to what he did last week at the same time. But he's definitely sharp today, a little flat. I don't know if he'll be heavier, but he might be. I honestly think I'll probably load him pretty hard tomorrow. Like I wouldn't be surprised. We've done it before. Like we've put him up around 1,000 to 1,200 grams of carbs, and he tolerates it super well. So I would say I'll probably push fullness up just a touch tomorrow. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Can I just quickly, man, to what you said before too?
Of course.
I think people really need to like think about that because Liz, my wife, and I, who is the co-owner of Flex, we did a podcast on this, and we definitely stole this term from someone. I don't know where it's from, but optimally quitting, I think, is like the best possible thing that everybody could do. And I was the exact same as you. I think I optimally quit with my best showing ever in my last one, and I think Matt will be doing it too, and I think you will be doing it. And I think a lot of people get like are fearful of missing out. But I think the question, even as a coach, that I ask myself all the time when I make decisions, and then similarly as a competitor, is like, for what benefit, at what cost?
Yep.
And you just have to weigh those things up. And if the benefits are greater, have at it. If the costs are potentially greater, then maybe consider quitting at the top as opposed to quitting once you start to go backwards.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there's like, obviously within the realm of competitive bodybuilding, there's a lot of people who, like, we're in a genetic reliant sport, right? You're going to always have the genetic cream of the crop rise to the top. Those people are always going to be okay.
If you can say that without being tongue tied, I think you're doing all right, bro.
my nose being stuffed up didn't help either, but yeah. So like and then everybody else is just trying to chase the genetic anomalies, and the unfortunate reality of that is because of the nature of the sport that we're in, that turns into I'm taking more drugs, I'm pushing more food, I'm stressing my system out more, and ultimately making things worse, right? Ultimately putting yourself in a position where maybe you're going to walk away from this with some stuff that you have to deal with the rest of your life, just because you wanted to try and continue to force your body to do something it really didn't want to. So, I mean, I definitely think there's some benefit to like seeing what you can do and pushing things to a certain point, but always having to make sure that you have that either a coach who will talk you through it, or like your girlfriend or significant other or best friend or whatever that makes you go, hey, you should think about these aspects of this, right? And if you're a single guy who like has nothing else to lose and everything is fine and you can just keep pushing or whatever, cool, that's fine. But if you've got a family, you've got businesses to run, and it's no longer a net positive across the board, it's definitely something that you need to consider. And maybe that means you just take some time away, and then at some point you come back and just enjoy it for what the process is. But I think all of us, when we started bodybuilding, go, I want to be really good. I want to be a professional. I want to be that behemoth that everybody sees walking around. But then once you're a decade into it and you're like, oh, this is a lot.
Especially when you coach people, like, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, this dude's elite. Man, like I had a guy recently where I literally was taking drugs out in the prep because he was becoming too muscular for his division.
Dude.
And like he pretty much turned pro on plyometrics. And I'm like, dude, by the end of it, he was on like 150 megs a test and 100 megs a master on. And
That's crazy.
he was like mid 90 kilograms peeled as a men's physique competitor. I'm just like, I'm so glad that I realized that this isn't me. Like,
Yeah.
come on, dude.
And I think, like, obviously, yeah, having clients that are genetic anomalies made me realize that, yeah, this isn't me. But then also, like, I mean, being at Destination, I'm privileged to be around like a number of the top level pros, and like seeing what they do and like seeing how their body responds to things. I'm like, oh, that's not fucking me. Like, I got an insight to it very quickly, where like I started to realize once I moved to Texas that like, all right, I just need to be competing because I want to compete, not because like I'm going to turn pro, or like there's a lot of structural flaws that I had. So it was like, I'm either going to beat my head against this wall until those structural flaws aren't something, or I just need to back off and just roll into this role of being the guy that guides those people. So
Yeah.
we're coming up on that hour now, and I know you got to get up to the gym here soon. So we'll cut it off here, man. But anything you want to say or plug before we head out?
I mean, we've only just recently actually just started kind of doing some YouTube stuff since us being Flex Success, which is the name of the business. And I think, yeah, like it'd be worth checking out. It's really cool. I've been doing sort of like our lead-in stuff to the shows with Cam and with Matt as well. And I'll start to produce a little bit more like training content and stuff. So, I mean, if anybody wants to reach out to us, they can just find us at flex_success on Instagram. All of our sort of, hot links and quick links and all that sort of stuff are on there. But no, man, it's been a pleasure to chat. It's a privilege to be one of your guests, man. So thanks for having me on.
That's a privilege to have you, dude. I mean, I think we met. Did we meet last year or the year before?
No, yeah, last year in Texas. So
Yeah. And it was one of those things. It's like sometimes you just meet people and you're like, I like that guy. Like we think very similar. We get along well. And like, I think one of the reasons that I'm drawn to you is because you're a very logic driven person. It's very much like everything you say makes sense and has backing to things. And that's one of the clear signs to me that somebody is a true expert, not just someone who's touting themselves to be one on the internet, is that they can go and have very logic based decisions and talk about everything they're trying to do, not just like, well, we did this because this book said so, or because this study said so, or whatever. Like that to me speaks volumes to things, but and then your Instagram is flexcoach_Dean, right?
that's the one. Yes. I think you know it more than me, but it sounds
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I was looking at it earlier today, but yeah. So anybody who is interested, maybe that's over your neck of the woods in Australia, definitely reach out to his Instagram, and we'll see you guys soon.
Cheers, mate.